bringing in Dr. Joe Fortunato. We're going to film school. We got a really good one here this morning, and I always have loved this movie, and I'll let Dr. Joe take it from there. Dr. Joe Fortunato. Joe, go right ahead.
Well, good morning, Ray. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, we do have a good one today. A beloved movie from the 80s, celebrating its 40th anniversary, Stand By Me, from 1986, released in August of 1986. So we're coming up on the day of its release here just in a few days. Directed by the great Rob Reiner. Writers were Bruce Evans and Reynold Gideon, based on the novella by Stephen King. And most people know that, but just a reminder for those who don't. After director Rob Reiner screened this movie for Stephen King, he noticed that King was visibly shaking and wasn't speaking. He left the room and came back and told Reiner that this movie was the best adaptation of his work that he'd ever seen. Wow. So it really moved Stephen King. And that started a very fruitful relationship between those two artists, Misery and stuff coming later. But like I said, Reiner developed a very good relationship with Stephen King so that he agreed to sell all of his film rights to Misery if Reiner directed that film, in fact. So some interesting connection there with a movie we've talked about in the past. And Reiner himself said this is one of the best films he's ever made. So a lot of praise from the creators of the movie itself. The novella and the film take place in the mythical town of Castle Rock, actually in the states of Maine and Oregon in the movie and the film. But Castle Rock became the name of Rob Reiner's production company. So there's a personal connection there between the narrative of this film and his business, if you will. This is the film debut of Jerry O'Connell. I don't know if I talked about all the cast. In fact, it stars Will Wheaton, River Phoenix, Corey Feldman, Jerry O'Connell, Kiefer Sutherland. What a who's who of young actors at the time. And for most of them, they were relatively unknown or just sort of beginning their careers. So there's a very famous scene in the film where they go into a pond or a swamp, if you will, and come up with leeches stuck all over their body. And Stephen King said that the scene with the leeches, which is from his novella, actually did happen to him when he was a child. And contrary to urban legend, the leeches that they used in the film were fake. The rumor was that they were very real. They were just molded latex and rubber cement and, various movie magic. But the boys did find that those fake leeches were irritating their skin, and they had to use them judiciously or face getting red marks all over their body.
You touched on it, Joe. That's the one thing that I had circled because you always give me a chance to jump in here. It is a who's who of young actors in this movie that went on to much more with the big lights and Bright City. Yeah, I mean, right? And I know you're going to elaborate on casting a little bit, but I love this cast in this movie.
Yeah, they really are great. And, 300 boys auditioned for the role of the 4 male leads, so quite a wide casting net. A couple of names that you might know that were in the mix for one or more of the boys' parts. Sean Astin said that he auditioned for the role of Chris. Stephen Dorff, Ethan Hawke were also considered for the role. People might remember that in sort of a wraparound, the adult writer is talking, voiceover on the film, and that is Richard Dreyfuss. Well, originally, Rob Reiner had trouble casting that role of the writer, that's the credit, and they went to Michael McKean, among others, who were considered before finally landing on Richard Dreyfuss. And, he did take care of the boys a lot. Rob Reiner himself was an avid non-smoker who campaigned against anti-smoking laws in California. So the cigarettes smoked by the boys were all made from lettuce leaves, which I didn't even know was a thing. But apparently that's one way to fake cigarette smoke. One of the popular things about the movie is the song itself and the title, Stand By Me. Originally, the novella was called The Body, which is much more grim and ominous sounding. And the studio didn't like that. That sounds like a different kind of movie than what this is. So they ended up choosing a title based on the Ben E. King song, which is, featured in the soundtrack. The King's version of the song was originally released in 1961, then re-released at the time of the film, and it peaked at number 9 in the top 10 list in 1986. So it was a real renaissance of that film. In fact, Michael Jackson was asked to cover Benny King's song for the film, And in the end, Rob Reiner thought that the original version was better suited. And I kind of agree with him since it's set in the 50s and stuff, and it would have just made more sense to have vintage song in the film. In fact, one other thing people kind of forget that this film was actually rated R because you think of it as sort of a family coming of age film, which it is. But the producers told Rob Reiner to add a bunch of obscenities to get it an R rating because they thought nobody would go see a PG or PG-13 Stephen King movie. So to pull in Stephen King's audience, they kind of bumped up the language to make it an R rating.
Yeah, a little bit of everything. Stand By Me. And again, I always say it's one of those maybe rainy afternoons you put that thing on, and it's a great cast, terrific movie, and good choice by Dr. Joe Fortunato today. Stand By Me Film School. Joe, what do you have coming up at the website, and maybe you personally? Anything going on?
Well, nothing coming up in the immediate future, but we do have a number of things coming up in the next month or two or three. So go to my website, joefortunato.net, look at the events page, mark some dates, save some dates of things we have coming up. We've got a live Fortunato Film School coming up at Jilly's. I've got a lecture at the Green Branch Library, and I don't want to announce it yet, but I'm working on something for the holidays. There's a very good chance we might be bringing another classic Christmas film to Akron for the holidays. So I'll let you know what happens there if it happens, but fingers crossed on that. But go to joefortunato.net and you'll find out all the things going on in my world. All
right. Well done, Joe. Perfect job again, my friend. Thank you for making the time for us, and we'll do it again next Friday.
Okay, I look forward to it. See you then.
You got it, my friend. Dr. Joe Fortunato joins us for Film School each and every Friday morning at this time here on 93.5, 1590 WAKR.